Hi, welcome to Basic Wet Felting Technique. You've heard me talk before about kind of like the history of needle felting and versus the history of wet felting. So needle felting is just that. It's using the needle to kind of combine the wool and make them into shapes. Whereas wet felting is actually a really different process from needle felting. It's also called traditional felting, and the biggest difference is that it's actually wet. You are going to wet down the fiber and agitate them to form like a solid fabric. So we're going to go from a lot of random kind of loose fluff to a very solid kind of finished tough piece. And the history of traditional or wet felting is really fun because it's still used in many cultures today. But some of the original things were probably the first piece of wet felting was probably a sole of a shoe or like an insert where they just put like some fleece to kind of keep their feet warm, and then they walked on it. And then at the end of the day, guess what? They didn't have like pieces of fluff anymore. They had a solid little insole. So shoes would have been like another thing that they would have made. People made bowls, they made vessels. People today make rugs. They made yurts, which are traditional Mongolian tents to live in cold climates. All kinds of different things were made. And this stuff is very old. It goes back to about 8,000 years old. So it's probably one of the first kind of fabrics that we know about. So let's get started wet felting. So I have some of the supplies here that we're going to use to get started and do our wet felting project today. And one of the things you need besides random bits of lovely wool and roving is you're going to need a pool noodle, some stocking ties, kind of stretchy, and definitely some bubble wrap, and some netting, like this is an old shower curtain. You can also use tulle like that you would find kind of in craft store or at a wedding. And let's see, definitely some soap. So we have this is Castile soap that's already liquid, or you have some olive oil soap that you could grade or shave off. You have a spray bottle filled with water, and then I have like an extra bottle of water just in case I need it. So when I'm gonna get started, I'm gonna shave some of this liquid soap or put some of the soap into the water just until it's slippery. And there's a lot of good wet felting books out there that will kind of explain this process more in detail about maybe the soap mixture and things, and just showing you more of the history and kind of the creative things that you can do with that. So they'll be referenced in a link below, so you can take a look at those if you like. So are we ready to get started? Okay, so I've taken my bubble wrap and set up my tray. So my bubble wrap is now on top of the tray, on top of the towel, on top of the table. And we're gonna do a small project today, so just so that you can kind of get the technique and what's going on with the process. Now, I've had projects that, like if you're doing a scarf or a rug, that take up the entire length of a 6-foot table and then some. So just be aware that these can definitely vary by project size. So we're going to I'm going to kind of show you how to build like your layers as if you were building like a little bit of like a round rug, or it can really be like any shape, but what's important is the layering technique. So take whatever is going to go on the bottom. I'm going to start with a white wool and then put colors over it because this will be like a little rug and the bottom part won't be seen. So as you know from the roving is you cannot pull from the middle. It's pretty strong. If you just kind of try to yank the roving apart, you have to go to the end, grasp the very end of it, pull gently, and then place it down. Place your pieces next to each other, side by side, overlapping about a half to a whole inch. If you're pretty consistent at this, then it doesn't take too long to To do it, the second rank overlaps the top by about an inch or more, even halfway, depending on how thick you want your project. And then you overlap it along the side. So it's almost like, think of it as laying shingles down for like, just as if you were roofing a house. The goal here is to get a very kind of even, kind of spaced area covered with the wool, so that when we start to wet this down and agitate it, we're not going to have a lot of gaps or like thin areas. The biggest problem is like a thin area that can develop into a hole, which is maybe not what you want, unless you really want a hole, in which case, you can totally have a hole if you want one. So we've done one layer shingled this way, and now I'm going to go in the opposite direction. Okay, so you pull it and then do the shingling technique. Now I'm doing it going this way down. And now you can see how we're halfway through, and we're going to just keep kind of building your layers until you have them as high as you want them. Okay, so we're continuing with our layering, and I've layered the base fiber one time going this way and then one time going that way. So now I have to remember that I'm going to go this way again. So when you're selecting your roving to use, or wool, this is really nice because it's all kind of, it's really nice roving. And the only thing you want to avoid when you're doing, you can felt almost anything as long as it hasn't been treated with a chemical called superwash, which is used so that you can machine wash a knitted or a finished item. So, but that has properties on it so it doesn't shrink. That's the whole point of having superwash. So make sure that the wool that you get isn't superwash, otherwise it may not felt. There's some breeds of sheep that are definitely better for felting than others. Merino definitely will felt. It's lovely to use. So I'm going to build up a couple of different layers and different colors just so that you can see kind of how pretty these are, and how you can actually kind of start to build like a little bit of a picture if you wanted. So this is a wool and merino and silk blend, so it has lots of different striations and colors in it. And hopefully this will help kind of show you the different shingling techniques that I'm doing. And then this is a really pretty wool and silk in like a lilac color. So just pulling from the end, bubble wrap, popping, and layering. And then okay, so now we have everything nicely layered, and I've got 3 layers right here, and I'm going to stop here because this is a good place to start our wet down in the next area. Oh, okay, so put these over here. And I have my prepared spray bottle with, this should be, it can be warm water. It probably should be warm to hot water, but if it isn't, that's just, it's not super imperative. Hot water helps the fibers open a little bit more rather than close up a little bit more. But if it's kind of like just room temperature, it's pretty good. Usually in Texas, everything is hot no matter what you do to it. So as I wet down the fiber, I'm not going to cover this over so that you can see it. But if I was doing it on my own and not for the camera, I would put the netting, spread the netting over it so that the water kind of goes through the holes and things. But I want you to be able to see how you need to wet down every area. One of the things in the books that the books will tell you is when you're putting the water in, put the water in first and then put your soap in so that you don't get a lot of suds, which this one had to travel, so it's kind of got a little bit of suds at the bottom. So you can see how pretty much everywhere is got at least a little bit of water on it. And if you start to notice like places where there's like some more white showing than you want to, you can always come back and kind of put some more, like I'm noticing that this one right here isn't quite covered. So you can just kind of come over here, peel off a couple of little thin layers and just layer them on top like that. Oh, don't forget to wet them down because like I almost did. So take your netting and carefully drape it over this. Press gently so that you're not moving things around. It's a little bit more important if you have like an elaborate design. You could definitely do like edges or different things that you wanted to do. Then more water is needed. So pool noodle right here kind of helps you smooth it out, push it down a little bit. And then what we're gonna do is wrap this all up into one package. And sometimes I even take like my water and and kind of actually sprinkle it on top. Whoops, just whoa. A little bit too much there, but if it's okay, you can always have like a towel nearby to soak it up. But I think this is actually going to take pretty good because there is a whole other layer underneath there. You need to get all the layers wet. They don't have to be saturated. Like you shouldn't have a standing pile of water in there, which I kind of do right now, but I'm gonna fix that in a second. So what we're gonna do is roll this up. Then the stockings, tie them on one side over here. When people in Siberia or Mongolia are wet felting rugs, they have a huge configuration of like tarps and canvases, and then they put their rug down and they actually have like, imagine this, but really big, and they pull it behind camels or horses to agitate it and roll it. So now what you're gonna do is you don't have to put a lot of pressure on the roll, but you do want to kind of like just gently roll it back and forth. I'm gonna put things out of the reach of my roll over here. And you're going to do this for approximately 10 minutes. So instead of watching me for 10 minutes, we're going to cut to the chase. 999, 1,000. Okay, so I've been rolling this for a while, and now it's time to do our first check. So a lot of this is going to be agitation, spray down, and then repeat the agitation. We're going to unroll it, check, and rotate. So this is our first checking to see if it's felted yet. So we just simply kind of carefully unroll it because you don't want to wrinkle it or move the fibers around too much, and then carefully peel back the tulle layer or the netting layer. And you can see that it is definitely gotten a lot flatter. And what I'm going to do is just kind of give it a little bit of a pinch on one side to see if the fibers are connected or not. So you can definitely see that they're not connected yet, but they're getting there. So, and then we want to be able to turn this. If you are a little bit worried about turning it, then I would put like another piece of plastic over it and then kind of peel it up and turn it that way. But with this one, I can see that it's pretty well kind of flattened down in there. It might even be a little bit too wet because I put all that water on it before. So if it's a little too wet, you just take a little bit of a towel and kind of soak up a little bit of that extra moisture, because it doesn't have to be super saturated. So it still feels pretty wet and it feels pretty soapy, so I'm good there. I'm going to put my layer back over it. If I did notice like some of this white kind of stuff coming through, I'm okay with that. I think it'll be an interesting feature. I might kind of give this one a little bit right there, right here. So, and hopefully these will kind of just take and they're actually gonna, okay, I'm gonna change my mind because it's gonna add the way that I was layering it, it was kind of specific, so it's not gonna be layered properly on top. So I'm just gonna leave it alone. But that's why you can change your mind on things. So now that we've tested and we've rotated our project, we're going to roll it back up again and continue with the agitation. I'll see you in 10 minutes. So depending on what kind of fibers you have and how many layers you have, you can kind of keep rolling and agitating for anywhere from 20 minutes to 30 minutes to even longer. So it just depends on when the fiber is done. Now you're going to do that pinch test where you pinch it and see if the fibers are actually pinched together and they don't come off the surface of the wool. So then you would get to the rinsing stage of this project. And to rinse it, ideally you could be at your sink where you can have a section that's filled with hot water and a section that's filled with cold water. And what you want to do there is you want to kind of take your project and fold it so that it's like a nice little package, and then you put it into your water. And what this is going to do is that once you put it into the hot water, it's going to open up the fibers, and then you're going to shock it into the cold water, and that will close the fibers together and cause them to shrink a little bit more. Now, you can be gentle with this. You can kind of like be so that you are really delicate so you don't shift anything around. Now, if you are feeling a little bit adventurous, you can kind of see what you get when you pull the edges of it. You can get like these kind of fluted edges if you pull the very edge of things. So this will definitely make like a very kind of strong little piece of fabric, of wool fabric, and you can actually kind of see the fibers kind of locked together. So when you have shocked it for a couple of times, you can actually take it, put a little bit more soap on it, and rub it against itself like this. So you can do kind of a couple of things, kind of scrunch it up. You can do anything that you can imagine to it. And felting properly, it will not kind of pull apart. So when you're ready for the final rinse to get all the soap off of it, you want to have some clean water over here. And to make sure that all the soap is off, you can even put a splash of kind of white vinegar in it that will neutralize the rest of the soap. Not too much so that your project doesn't smell like pickles. And then when you're done, you simply set it in the sun to dry, and you'll have a lovely little felted piece. Enjoy. For more adventures in needle felting, please like and subscribe to our channel. And for kits and supplies, check out the link to my Etsy store below. Thanks for watching.